say the gray zone, we are not discussing the gray beings. We are talking about the idea of a blending of different concepts, a limbo state that connects to and relies upon old-fashioned and outdated paradigms in an attempt to explain metaphysical concepts that creates misunderstandings and misinterpretations. And we will provide the key to eliminating those misinterpretations, misunderstandings. Now, again, remember that there is a difference, as we have said, between the description of an experience, which is valid, and the description of the underlying mechanism that is creating that experience, which is also valid. Even though sometimes those two things can seem diametrically opposed, the idea is to simply understand the difference between a linear-based description within time and space, based on concepts that you're used to thinking about, and a newer, more modern understanding of the underlying mechanisms that create those experiences. So to allow for more clarity, it would be more wise to be able to recognize and acknowledge both simultaneously. On one level, saying, I am choosing to create an experience of such and such, while simultaneously I understand that the underlying mechanism is this or that, so that I am not assuming, nor in my communications about metaphysical concepts, allowing you to assume that I believe that the emotional and experiential description has anything to do with the actual mechanism at hand that is creating or allowing me to create the experience that I am describing. So that these two things can be acknowledged simultaneously as equally important, both the experiential description and the description of the mechanism, allowing you to have the experience while not allowing anyone to assume that you necessarily think that the description of the experience explains how the experience was created or why it's happening, thus creating more clarity, more distinction between those two states, so that you can use them more flexibly, and so that there is no confusion about what is actually being said. So the idea, as we have given examples, of things like reincarnation, where in the old paradigm you say, well, I have lived before as this other person, I may live again as another person, instead of understanding the actual mechanism of everything exists simultaneously. I, the person I am now, have never been another person, because that other person exists at the same time that I do. Even though it is separated by the illusion of time and space, to use the word time in this concept, saying it exists at the same time, means it is happening simultaneously. All things are happening simultaneously, all things existing in one single timeless moment that, when you look at it from a linear perspective, appears to be stretched out in a moment after moment after moment sort of paradigm. But again, thinking about it from a linear perspective, viewing it and attempting to describe it from the linear perspective of one life after another, while it can be created as an experience, is not a description of the mechanism, since the mechanism is that everything exists all at once. But by stretching it out in a linear sense, you can create the experience of having had these other lives, when in fact what you're actually doing from the present is simply energetically creating connections to other lives that exist at the same time, other people that exist at the same time that you do, drawing upon those experiences, downloading their experiences to aid and assist you in the themes that you're exploring, as this person in this life, while they may be doing the same with you, downloading your experience and information in whatever context works for them in their lives, because they exist simultaneously with you. They are not becoming you reincarnationally. You have not been them reincarnationally. You both coexist simultaneously and are sharing information in a dynamically, constantly changing web of informational exchange, energy exchange, experiential exchange, so that each of you can form the information and rely upon the information you need to explore the themes that represent who each of you distinctly are as individual aspects of creation. So the way that you can allow yourself to move forward with a clearer understanding of metaphysical concepts is to go back to the framework we introduced some time ago called the 5 laws. If you remember, the law is, number 1, you exist. Number 2, everything is here and now. Number 3, the one is the all are the one. Number 4, what you put out is what you get back. Number 5, everything constantly changes except for the laws. So when you use that as your basic framework, as your basic template to understand any metaphysical or spiritual concept, by comparing the metaphysical concept to the structure of the 5 laws, you can begin to realize the true underlying mechanisms as opposed to the description of the experience that you are having. For example, the first law, you exist. When you have a complete and deep understanding of what that means and how it means you cannot cease to exist, even though you may change your expression, you will always be you from your perspective experiencing things, that you cannot cease to exist, then you know that death is not the end of anything. It is simply a transformation into another state of being, be it physical or non-physical, doesn't matter. And therefore you can use that law to understand that there is really no such thing as death as you think you have understood it experientially from your linear perspective for thousands upon thousands of years. When you understand the second law, that everything is here and now, as we just described reincarnationally, you will understand automatically by your depth of understanding in that second law that there really can be no such thing as actually having been the other person, mechanically speaking. You can have that experience. You can always create the experience. But it is the fact, the mechanical fact, that everything exists simultaneously that allows you to have the experience of using and viewing that mechanism from a linear perspective that allows you to have the experience of having lived before, the so-called memory of having lived before, which is just your interpretation of the ongoing, presently existing energetic connection you have made to those other people, past or future. When you understand that everything is all the same thing expressing itself in a variety of different ways, then you know there is really no such thing as disconnection. You don't necessarily have to have the experience that you call disconnection, pain and suffering, because you know that you are always connected. Even if you create the experience of disconnection, you have to create that from the understanding that you are always connected. So you can choose how to use your connection, how to know that everything is one thing expressing itself in different ways, and that it is not possible for you to actually mechanically be disconnected from existence, but you can use it to create the experience of disconnection, use it to create the experience of disempowerment, use it to create the idea that you lack trust, lack confidence. You can use it that way, but you have to understand that paradoxically, because everything is one thing expressing itself in a number of different ways, that you are just simply using that connection in a variety of ways that could be negative or positive, mechanically speaking. When you understand very deeply that what you put out is what you get back, you can understand that physical reality is a guiding mechanism that is showing you exactly a reflection of the vibrational resonance and frequency that you are giving off with your belief systems, be they conscious or unconscious. When you understand that change is the constant within creation, you understand that the changes you go through is your relationship to the thing that never changes, which is the structure of existence, which are the 5 laws. So it is a deeper understanding and a remembering of the 5 law structure that would act as a filtering system and a template for you to compare any metaphysical concept you come across to that structure, to see what metaphysical concepts are being thought of as a reflection of an experience, as opposed to how to understand that metaphysical concept mechanically, the underlying mechanism that allows you to have the experience. So a deeper understanding of the 5 laws will allow you to compare any metaphysical or spiritual or even non-spiritual concepts against that, to know that that is the structure of existence. That's how everything works. It is always a combination of those laws that creates every experience you have. But at the same time, being clearer about what those 5 laws actually mean, going deeper into your understanding of them, will allow you to automatically start understanding and seeing the difference between an experience of a metaphysical concept and the mechanism that underlies it. Again, for example, the concept of psychic functioning or predictions. If you know, again, that everything exists now, then it is not a surprise that someone who is tuned to a parallel probability reality could pick up on the idea that that reality that you could shift to may have a high degree of energy behind it, a high degree of momentum behind it, may be the most likely manifestational reality to occur if things do not change. But understanding the 5th law, that everything changes, gives you the opportunity to say, well, if I understand that that prediction is not necessarily a prediction of the future, but a prediction, a sensing of the energy that exists in the present, because everything is here and now, then I understand that it's simply an opportunity to know where the energy lies now, and to know that in the 5th law, everything changes, that if it doesn't necessarily have a lot of energy behind it, or the energy behind it can be changed, then the prediction doesn't necessarily have to manifest if it's not something that you prefer. And by adding energy to it in a different direction, by defining it in a different way, by using it as simply a present day sensing of where the energy is, instead of an absolute prediction of something that's inevitable or unavoidable, then you can use the law of change to add energy to it in a particular way that can allow the prediction to render itself obsolete by having known what it is telling you about the present energy. So again, using the 5 laws and comparing metaphysical concepts that you have lived with for thousands of years against that framework can give you far more clarity about what the mechanical truth is behind many of the metaphysical or spiritual experiences you may have in your life. So we would always suggest and recommend and encourage you to look more deeply into the 5 laws, understand them much more clearly, and that will give you the template to carry through life, so that anytime you have a metaphysical experience, even if you want to validate it as an experience, which is fine, it will still simultaneously give you the clarity you need to understand the mechanism that goes along with it, so that you don't necessarily think that the experiential definition is a description of how those things actually work, which can cause much confusion in people who are coming into a clearer understanding or a growing understanding of metaphysics and spirituality. We thank you for allowing us to share this idea of this gray zone where these things can get blended in to provide more clarity and take them out of confusion, take them out of misinterpretation, take them out of misunderstanding, so that you can move forward with the idea of metaphysics in a more modern way, and it can serve you to create the reality more consciously that you prefer. In return for the gift you have given us of allowing us to share this information with you this day of your time, I ask, in what way may we now be of service to you? Please begin with your dialogues and your questions if you wish.